So, hi everybody, this is T Falcon Napier. Welcome to the Oracle of the Self coaching session. I think this is coaching session number 11. I'm not entirely sure, but nevertheless, we've been having, I think, a really good series that was very different than how I'd originally conceived these coaching sessions to be. And so I think when we send out the next ChangeWorks profile for you guys to complete, maybe I'll try doing what I'd originally had in mind. But this, for whatever reason, has become a little bit more of a randomized training program, and I'm okay with all that. Obviously, you guys are enjoying it, or you wouldn't come and be with us every week. So I'm just going to finish what we've started in the style we've been doing this in, and then we'll see what we do next time around. So. Last time around, we started talking about the ChangeGrid maneuvers. So it really is great that where you are on ChangeGrid and what that location kinds of means, because again, this is the Oracle of the Self. This is you talking to you about you. So when you answer these two questions about your perceived challenge and your perceived ability about whatever it is that we've queried you around, you're going to plop someplace on the ChangeGrid. Well, hopefully you're starting to learn a little bit more about yourself as you learn about these different locations on the ChangeGrid. And so that's obviously one of the very first goals. Do you know where you're at on the ChangeGrid, and does that your understanding of that location on the ChangeGrid help you to better understand what you're thinking and feeling about whatever the subject at hand happens to be? Now, once you got that all squared away, the next question is, well, where should I be? So I am where I am and I get it, but it's not serving me well. Or maybe there's a place on the ChangeGrid that would serve me even better if I was there on the grid instead of where I am on the grid. So how do I go about moving myself around? And that's where we started talking about ChangeGrid maneuvers. And I've given you guys a couple of different of these handouts. I'm happy to chat them over to you again if you uh, don't have them handy or didn't receive them. But yeah, nevertheless, there it is. So last time around, I threw out a little scenario to everyone, and I just said, so imagine for a second, you're very, very low on the ChangeGrid. Let me see if I can find a good ChangeGrid. You're downgrid. You've got some activity there for whatever reason. You view your ability as being extremely high and the challenges being very, very low. And here you are deep down in the depths of apathy. And nevertheless, the activity is something that needs to be done sooner or later. And the example that I gave is about this upcoming trip. I've got to convert some US dollars into, I think, British pounds. I'm not too worried about euros because we're only making the one stop in France, and there's nothing I care to buy. And if there's something I want, I'm sure I can just throw it on a credit card. But when you're going to be wandering around the city, for a few days, I think it's always good to have some local currency in your pocket. And so the debate is always, do you wait till you get there and do one of those exchange booths at the airport, which you know are ripping you off? Or do you try to go to a bank and get it square? Or you just go to your bank here and say, look, can you just take 100 US dollars and convert it to British pounds for me or whatever? So that's it. It's a rather mundane sort of procedural sort of task. It's just a line item on your to-do list that needs to get done. But bottom line truth is stopping by the bank and asking the banker or whoever you're dealing with to arrange for you to have some cash. This is a very high ability, low challenge task for you to complete, for me to complete. You would think that would mean that you would just go ahead and do it and get it checked off of your list. But the truth is that because you're down in apathy, what happens to the momentum behind getting that particular task taken care of? Well, again, you can watch the last video around that, but obviously you don't have a whole lot of energy around it. And it might be quite important. If it wasn't important, it has no chance of getting done. But because it's important, at least you know sooner or later you're going to get around to it. But in the meantime, it kind of sits there as this thing that you're aware of, but not really thrilled about going and doing it. Ugh. So last time around, we talked about how you could go about raising your level of productive tension to get something done. But along the way, I had to say to you, well, where do you think you should be on the ChangeGrid? Who is going to do the best job of getting that currency converted at the best possible rate with the lowest possible fee, what energy is really going to do that? And last time around, you guys were very accurate in saying like, well, it's definitely a driver activity because it's something you got to get done. And because it's about looking at facts and figures and details, it's an analytical kind of a driver energy. And so this is where you decided that we needed to be. We need to move from where we are down in apathy up to around here on the change grid where you see me squiggling around right now. So we needed to do both a combination of upgrid maneuvers and outgrid maneuvers. So we talked a bit about those maneuvers and how we could do that. So today I thought we'd talk about the opposite. What if you're in a situation that has you very far upgrid? And how do you go about then managing your level of tension to do that? So before I jump into that, I do want to just check in with all of you on the call, particularly those of you who are relatively newer to the world of tension management, and say, um, are you already familiar with these different energies? And we talk about the driver energy, the expressive energy, the amiable, the analytical. Is this something you're already aware of, comfortable enough for us to use that language? Or do we need to kind of do a little sidebar and touch base on what these different energies are to get everybody on the same page? Thoughts about that? If you don't unmute and say something, I'm going to assume you're good to go. So, yeah, go ahead, Tom and Anja. Yeah.
Well, I think so, but of course we don't know what we don't know, right? But
Yeah,
I think I
oh,
understand enough to move forward.
okay, well, just as long as you guys are comfortable just saying like, if I got a question or clarify this or whatever, because I do have more of a tendency to just, go at this with, we talked about trying to take a drink out of a fire hose. So I'm always going to assume that my audiences are absorbing what I'm saying, unless they raise a question, and don't hesitate to raise a question as we go about doing this. So
Okay,
Sounds
great.
good.
it's all good. It's all good. All right, so let me give you guys a situation. And maybe again, if you went back and looked at your the last change grid you filled out, you'd find something, but hopefully you guys have also learned or embraced the realization that there is nothing magical about any activity list that I might send you. So if I create one on relationships or I create one on whatever, don't think that there's something really special and sacred about those activities. This just happens to be an activity list that we put together for whatever our intended purposes happen to be. The truth is that the change grid exists in your head. It's always been there. It's always going to be there. And on that change grid are not a handful of sort of pre-mapped sort of activities, but absolutely everything that's going on in your life, every moment of every day is somewhere on your change grid. So when you look at a change grid that's got, oh, I don't know, 3 or 4 or 5 activities sprinkled all around it, I would hope you guys realize that you don't have just 3 or 4 or 5 things that are sprinkled around inside of your brain right now. You have 3 or 4 or 5,000, maybe, I don't know how many, but you've got a massive, massive amount of activities going on in your mind, in your life, and they're all happening simultaneously. So your change grid is very densely populated. So when we're doing this Oracle, this exercises, we're saying, well, let's just pause for a moment. Let's really zoom in on a particular activity to see what we can really learn as we're looking through this. Okay, so now I'll give you a situation. So you're very far upgrid about. Now you can plug in any situation you want. So right now, if you want to make this as real for yourself as possible, just think about something going on that this upgrid stress response might be describing. So for you guys to do that, for you to end up in stress, remember on your quick reference guide that stress has a phrase associated with it. And that phrase is, well, I know I need to do something, but I don't know what to do. So just tell me what to do and I'll do it. There is this feeling of borderline, if not full-blown desperation, that something's got to get sorted out. It needs to be done. The key word is panic. Or darn close to panic if you aren't quite that far upgrade yet. Your emotional state is governed by anger, grief, fear, or shame. Those emotions tend to be of the unresourceful variety. So these emotions do tend to feed upon themselves and distort reality. Your reasoning abilities are emotionally ruled. And if your reasoning abilities are emotionally ruled, that means they are not logically ruled. And so whatever logical capabilities you have been subordinated when you are up in stress, perhaps subordinated to the point that they're not even actively in play that moment in time. Decision-making abilities tend to be more reactive because you are in a panic state. There is a problem that needs to be dealt with right away. And you're going to jump on whatever the first reasonable course of action seems to be because you perceive your resources as being rather scarce. It's not like you have a whole lot of choices that you're debating when you're way up in stress. In fact, being up in stress interferes with your ability to see all of the resources that are around you. So because you can't see them, you certainly can't tap into them and get any benefit out of them. So you perceive them as being scarce, regardless of how available they may be. And so you're grabbing hold, grabbing hold. You're feeling out of control. You just want to stop being out of control. So somebody throw you a life ring, whatever it is. Overall productivity, we view it as being counterproductive because activity and productivity are dramatically different things. So you can be very emotionally active, very intellectually active, very physically active, but that doesn't necessarily mean that all that activity is the right thing to be doing in the right way. And so there's a lot of false starts up in stress. There's a lot of dabbling that goes on. There's a lot of jumping on board a particular course of action only to abandon it later when you stumble across another course of action that you think might serve you well. So point is, I want you to think about some sort of a situation that might be going on in your life or might describe something that you are aware of going on in life in general out there in the world of civilization that you can kind of connect with this. So bottom line, you're up in stress about something. Now, I'll go ahead and give you an example that I could come up with. And so let's see. In fact, Linda, you're on the call. Can you unmute for a second, or are you doing other things? There you are.
No,
There
I'm
you
here.
are. Are you comfortable sharing with people what you've been doing for the past couple of days?
Using every single technique that T is talking about in spades.
Okay. And you want to give them kind of like a little bit of the context so they know what.
Yeah, to do what, Linda?
I was in severe pain and was in the hospital for 2 days. I just got home. And it was so excruciating. And knowing that you're in that stress state, that anxiety can make everything worse, all I was trying to do was breathe and go up into my, gee, that's interesting.
Yeah.
And do everything I possibly could do to do downgrid maneuvers on myself so that hopefully the pain would, you know what I mean?
Yeah. So
How did it work, Linda?
well, let me just try these things. First of all, Linda is absolutely fine, but they did so many tests on her that she now knows that she is fine on so many different levels. But she had this real pressure, abdominal kind of just pain from whether it was gas or whatever, but it was really terrible for her. And of course, we're thinking, heart attacks in women manifest themselves with a lot of different sorts of symptoms. And the moment she said, I'm feeling all of this pressure up in my chest, well, we just said, well, then obviously we're going to the emergency room. And so we went to the emergency room and they very quickly did an EKG. There was nothing noteworthy about her EKG, but they decided to do every blood test that science has ever invented. And they were able to rule that all out. Well, then they're thinking about, well, is it diverticulitis? Is there something going on with her gallbladder? So by the time they started doing all this kind of stuff. They said, look, we know she's no longer in an emergency situation, so we're going to admit her to the observation ward at our local hospital. And there she is. So I will show you, this is the morning after the whole ER kind of a thing. So here's I guess my questions for you guys from a tension management perspective is, when Linda started having this situation and we started to, do something active about it, where do you think we were on the change grid? Okay.
Or stress.
We're way up here in stress. Now, I come along, I don't tend to be someone who experiences extremes of emotions, no matter what the emotion is. I just tend to be more flat or whatever. You can blame that on the the SSRIs and SNRIs I might be taking, but I'm kind of naturally more mid-grid, first of all, by nature, but I also think that's also part of what the medications are all about. And, they're part of my life. So there I am. So I'm, of course, going like, all right, well, we'll get to the hospital, we'll do our thing. And so the moment they ruled out that this was a heart issue, they ruled out a heart issue, what do you think happened to everyone's level of productivity?
Tension went down.
Tension went way down. And so there we are. Now, nevertheless, you can imagine how long we've been sitting in the emergency room, and Linda is laying there not knowing the answer to anything. And so do you think that her thought process was being governed more by logic or by emotion?
Emotion.
Emotion. And we know that emotions tend to feed upon themselves and distort reality. So in Linda's mind, was she becoming, let's see, healthier or more in danger as she laid there ruminating on what's going
We're
on?
in danger.
Right.
And you have to remember that all day on Saturday, even though I was in the emergency room, they were stopping in and doing tests, and I'm going, I can't take this anymore. You guys have to do something about this. You have to do something about it. And then they'd leave for an hour. And I'd hit the nursing thing, and have you ever been in the emergency room where these sounds, beep, 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 beep,
Yeah,
for
yeah.
8
Yes.
hours?
When Michelle broke her leg severely, she had a temporary cast put on, and they had to drill down and secure her foot to do the surgery, and they drilled through a nerve. And
Right.
it was, once it started coming back, it was just unbelievable. And she just grabbed me and said, I need something now. And I rushed out and grabbed the first doctor, and he came in and gave her some pain medication, which took care of it. But I mean, you want to talk about an immediate stress response.
Right. And here you are in every.
Absolutely. Only add this to it. Add this to it. I never really did see a doctor. I saw nurses and representatives of a doctor. And when I said, I can't take this anymore, the gal goes, I'm going to go talk to the doctor and get you some pain medication. An hour later, I finally just yelled out, somebody has to help me.
Right. Right. Okay. So now, so again, for the subject of the call, you get the idea. Linda is way up in stress, and she's way up in stress. All right. Now, I'm there for at least the first couple of hours because, I worked in an emergency room for a while. And so I understand what these gigantic gaps are between seeing somebody. If they're going to order blood work, there is no reason for the doctor to come in and try to do something definitive when they don't have the results of the lab work back. So sooner or later, they might come in and comfort you, but they have a flock of people who are coming in and out and comforting. So this is really something that's very much a great example of how the human mind has this tendency to awfulize things when you are upgrid. Now, the word awfulize is made up of 2 words. Those 2 words are awful and lies. And so unless something is being done to move you to a healthier place on the change grid, your mind will get to a point where it starts to say, well, they're feeling this way. I've got to give them some reason to feel this way. So let me see if I can give them some storyline to kind of attach to this, some sort of narrative so that this anger can be directed somewhere or this fear can be directed somewhere. So meanwhile, I'm looking at Linda's monitors. And one of the things that I was trained in when I went through, I've not brought this up, but along the way, I was an EMT. And so I had to go through all the EMT training. And I went through a course on how to read EKGs. And so I'm watching what's going on her monitor. For all of you who have any kind of awareness, Linda's pulse rate was like 68, which is normal for Linda. Her oxygen level is 100%. She's breathing about 10 breaths per minute. Her blood pressure is like 100 over 60 something, which is very normal for her. There is no indication in any of her vital signs. I'm watching the EKG on the monitor, the little tracing go by. It is sinus rhythm. Even on it, it says normal sinus rhythm, normal sinus rhythm. And so I'm kind of going like, we still have an issue that needs to be dealt with, but this is not an issue of an emergency situation, at least not one having to do with her heart. So, okay, well, I'm saying all this. Meanwhile, we have a physician on the call. So, Brian, you get the idea about the dynamic that's going on?
Absolutely. And I wonder for Linda, like some emergency rooms now, because we're talking about perceived challenge, right? So I wondered if there's emergency rooms where they actually let you know where you are in the queue system.
Yep.
Like your labs are being read or this has been ordered, the doctor will see it soon. Like if that would have brought the tension down because
Well,
they're
in fact, yeah,
experimenting
because
that.
they take your cell phone number and they're constantly sending you updates about what's
But they
going on.
only send you an update by a text that you can't answer. Like, do you have any questions? And I'm writing, yes, I need a nurse. Yes, I need a nurse. And they'd go, is there anything else we can help you with? It wasn't a person sending the text.
Right. Now, again, let me
And
point
you'd
out.
already left. Nobody was there to help me, and nobody was walking by.
Yep. Okay. Thank you, dear. You're illustrating exactly what I wanted to illustrate. Now this situation is 2 days over. Can you guys feel that as Linda starts to recount her experience, that her stress is returning, even though the situation no longer exists?
Of course.
Mhm.
Of
Absolutely.
course.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Now you have to ask
Anger to
yourself,
it.
to what degree does that actually serve Linda well in that moment, in this moment, etc.? So this is again something from the oracle of the self, that you recognize when you are in an experience versus when you are recounting it or remembering it or whatever. The human mind does not know the difference between a state that is real and a state that is vividly imagined.
Mhm.
So it's very easy to get sucked into drama that you experienced before, to the point that you're re-experiencing it in the present moment.
Mhm.
And it
Well,
isn't
a
just
good adrenaline rush.
the adrenaline, and that's when we get to the neurochemistry of it. There's a lot more that's going on because Linda was very much pulled into her limbic system. So again,
Mhm.
for those of you who aren't familiar with your limbic system, this is really more about primal sorts of things. This is the seat of emotion, but it's very primitive. It's a very old part of the human brain when it comes to evolution. And when you get in there, fight or flight response gets to be triggered and all that. So it's good that we have a limbic system. I wouldn't want to have mine removed, but it pulls you out of your cortex, which is where logic lives, and understanding things and all that are really going on. And so I'm saying things to Linda. I'm trying to do some downgrid maneuvers. So I'm trying to say, if you were truly in an emergency situation, this place would be flocked by medical professionals. The
Mhm.
fact that there's no one in this room with you right now tells you you're okay. Yes, I get it. You're uncomfortable. Yes, we don't have an answer, but you know that you are not in a life or death situation. Right?
Mhm.
Well, what resolved the situation?
They gave me morphine.
They gave her morphine for the pain, which I think
Praise
also
God.
has an effect on your thought process. So I don't know biochemically what's happening,
It
but I know,
stopped the pain
That's
well,
the thing. Hello.
It does zap the pain, doesn't it, Linda?
immediately.
yeah, it absolutely
Immediately.
zaps the pain. But again, I'm looking more at the neurotransmitter side of things. So Brian, you can explain the details of all this, but for whatever reason, the frame that you had put around what you were experiencing was suddenly discarded and a different frame took over.
Yeah.
And that's great. So just keep in mind that while morphine eliminated the pain, the morphine also distorts reality. Now that can become a real issue. And Lynn and I dealt with this when we were on a cruise with her parents because her dad had what they suspected to be a gallbladder attack. And this is when we happened to be in port in Jamaica. And so he was in pain, so they gave him pain medication. But because they gave him pain medication, they said, now we have to get him off the ship. Because as long as he's on pain medication, we don't know what he's really feeling. We don't know what's really going on. And aboard ship, that's not the place for us to do that. The ship, the onboard facilities on the ship are highly sophisticated. They can do anything they needed to do, but they're not going to do something if there are land-based options for all that. So they decided to airlift Linda's father from Jamaica back to Miami, air ambulance, the whole kind of thing went on and on and on.
Wow.
All right, so I'm just saying to you that while pain medications take away the pain medications create their own set of problems.
Mm-hmm.
And so that undermines the medical professional's ability. I mean, if they ask her, describe this pain, because she went there because she was experiencing pain. Pain is a highly subjective thing. And so if I'm asking you to describe your pain and you're having some, I don't know, discotect, drug experience, everything's great, I don't think you're really a good reporter on what's really happening. And now I'm blind again.
T,
So,
did we ever find out what was wrong with Linda?
No,
no, the bottom line is Linda had some sort of a indigestion kind of thing going on. This is what her records basically say, but it wasn't caused by any kind of a blockage. They did CAT scans, they did all this. There were no blockages going on. There was nothing going on as far as her gallbladder was concerned. There was nothing going on. Everything was fine. There were no tumors, nothing like everything was just fine and dandy. She had a tummy ache. And unfortunately, all that trapped gas was putting all kinds of pressure on her. This is not an uncommon thing, but nevertheless, it's terrifically unpleasant. But we'd already given her the home remedy sort of stuff. It didn't make any real difference. And so bottom line, here we end up. Now, I'm going to slide into the screen. This is Linda at 7 a.m. the very next morning. Okay. So, she had a headache. Linda can't take aspirin. She's allergic to all analgesics. So if she has a headache or whatever, they just have to use an ice pack or whatever. So that's actually an ice pack. I think she should keep it as her next holiday bonnet. But of course, being the husband I am, I brought her her pajamas. I've even brought her her pillow, that little green, that's her pillow, so all this. I mean, this hospital I could take my golf cart to. So it's real close by. Although she's wearing the hookups for a monitor, she wasn't attached to anything. So they're just there if they needed them. She even had an IV line already laid, but she was
yeah,
never an IV.
they used that a whole bunch.
They did that to take subsequent blood draws.
And give me all
Morphine.
all the medicines. Yep.
Yeah.
Did
yeah,
they send you home with all these things? Because it looks like you have a ready-made Halloween costume.
Yeah, right. Yeah, they took them all off. They left a bunch of sticky ones I had to take off myself, and they gave me 4 different medications I have to take for 10 days.
Right. So this is her at 7 o'clock in the morning. She is ready to come home. But they said, look, we really do want to do that CAT scan or CT scan rather. We really want to do whatever we can do to rule out.
They want me to see the what's the name of it? Gastroenterologist.
Gastro, yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So anyway, I brought this up because I just wanted to give you guys a real kind of live example of what we're talking about here. So here she is, very far upgrid. And now that you can all understand that, and you recognize that everything we talk about when it comes to stress travels as a set. Do you think Linda was thinking, I know I need to do something, I don't know what to do, just tell me what to do and I'll do it? Do you think that was her thought process?
Oh, yeah.
Yep, yep. And then I
Panic.
called my doctor and she told me, listen, why'd you call me if you didn't want me to tell you to go to the
Linda got
emergency?"
bottom line by her doctor. So it's like, you called me, you told me what was going on, I've told you to go to the ER. So
That's not the answer I wanted.
right. So go to
That's
the ER.
right. That's basically what I almost said. Then I said, okay, I'll go.
Yeah. And so off we went. And, obviously we didn't call an ambulance or anything like that. We went in. But then I will say, I will admit something that I learned working in an ER, but here you go. So Linda was describing herself as having all this gastro kind of stuff going on. So upset tummy, all this pressure, couldn't feel like she could burp or do the other end or whatever. And I said, Linda, if you go in there and with that as your entering complaint, you may very well be sitting in the waiting room at the ER for a long time.
And all alone.
That's right. But if you say to them that you're feeling this pressure in your chest, they're going to do an EKG within a matter of seconds.
Mm.
And so that's what I said, just tell, because it's true. She was feeling this pressure in her upper abdomen, her lower rib cage, or her upper rib cage. And so again, I'm thinking she's got a gas bubble trap somewhere, but who knows? Let's do everything to be as cautious as we can. But I said you have to tell them that, because not only am I trying to manage her level of tension, it's important that you also manage the level of tension of everyone else who's involved. Otherwise, you may not get the kind of attention you really need. So you guys can, again, I'm not sharing this with you so it's an interesting story about Linda. I'm sharing this with you so that you see tension management in action.
And that's true because the emergency room is built on a queue system, right? So it's
Triage.
priority. So you can you can be the first one in, but I guarantee you, if you have the simple nosebleed and someone comes in with the myocardial infarction, which is a
Yep.
heart attack, they're going to
Yep.
get seen priority. Like all resources are marshaled to them. So
Absolutely.
you're always managing tension in the emergency department. But what's interesting about Linda's experience to me, particularly being up there in stress, when we talk about emotions, as I said, in the laboratory, we never study good, bad feelings. A moto in Latin literally means movement, right? So emotions and the system, in the limbic system, these are things that are designed to move through the body, literally, and you experience them in real time. So you talked about how we can reprise them and the event has moved on, but we have not. And we just keep reprising them and keep reprising them. And I think one time I remember us actually timing it.
Yep.
We lost him.
Yep. We lost you, Brian. All right. Well, when you come back, we'll hear the rest.
I would imagine that Linda still has some tension around this.
Absolutely, because again, and when you go back, it's all about anchoring. When you go back and start thinking about something, those emotions come back. So a little sidebar. One of the things that I notice about people that are upgrid is the moment they start talking about something. And by the way, again, it doesn't have to be something that's happening to you. It could be something you read in the news that bothered you. It could be something about somebody else's behavior or whatever that you witnessed. It still can pull forward all of these emotions like it's happening in that moment. Personally, obviously I understand it, but I don't relate to it because that's not something in my responses. And again, maybe it's about SNRIs and SSRIs, don't really know. But I just can't connect. I can't relate to people having all this emotional reaction to something, regardless of what that something might be, because I can't fix it. If it stays in the emotional place, I can't really do anything to fix it. All right, so two more things, and then we're going to get to.
So I want to tell whoever said that about, that there's still, was that David that said there's still some emotion going on, because now I'm afraid to eat.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yep.
But they gave her food. They gave her regular food.
Well, I
And
had to order it though.
well,
and
I know, dear, but they would not have allowed you to be served it if it wasn't something they considered okay for you to have.
Right.
That's a
Right.
lot of trust, T.
It is a lot of trust, but I'm looking at the wall, and the wall says that, this is Linda's situation. This is what's really going on. I wish I could see her chart, but because charts are now all electronic, there's no longer the opportunity to pick up the chart off the foot of the bed and flip
But
through
they,
and see all
they
the-
said there was no diverticulitis
no
because that's
diverticulitis.
what it sounds like.
That's
Yeah.
what it sounded like to me, yeah.
Yeah, but anyway, bottom line is the dietary wise, they simply put her on what they would consider to be a cardiac diet. So probably low salt, that sort of stuff in the moment. But they served her a beautiful piece of salmon on top of a bed of very nice looking lettuce, better than the lettuces that you get in a restaurant, and spears of asparagus and all this sort of, it looked like a very, very nice meal. And so I'm thinking like, okay, if they're willing to feed her a normal meal, then again, we're all good. We're all good. We're all good. All right. So let me throw in two other things. Now, there I am. And my biggest tension with Linda in an ER, and this gets to Anja's point, is that Linda is profoundly allergic to aspirin, ibuprofen, and Tylenol. All of those will trigger an anaphylactic reaction within a matter of seconds. And that would be far worse than what she's going through. So from the moment we talk to anybody at the hospital, I'm reminding everyone she is profoundly allergic to analgesics. You cannot give her any analgesics. And I must have said that to 4 or 5, 6 of the staff that would come in. And I know they put it on the chart, but this emergency room has 46 bays.
Should have written it on your forehead.
That's what my thought was. I thought they would immediately put an alert bracelet on her, something like that, to let them all know. So when I left, I said, Linda, you make sure that every time a new person comes in here to talk to you about anything, you got to tell them about your allergies. Or they might inadvertently, I don't want to say it's neglect or anything, but you've got short staffing in a 46 bay emergency room that is filled with people over the age of 55. This is our community's hospital. So that's my turn. I'm way up in stress about somebody giving her aspirin. So, because Brian can tell you, the moment someone mentions heart, they're going to want to throw in a little bit of a thinner, and the easiest thinner is some aspirin, and that would send her in an anaphylactic shock. So,
and the stress part for me about that is that every single person, and I can't even count the number of people that came in, would say, ask me the same questions. Are you allergic to anything? Was one of them. And I wanted to just
scream.
Didn't you read my chart before you walked?
No. But there's another reason. So let me give you all a downgrid maneuver about this. When someone walks in to you as a patient, the first thing they're supposed to do is ask you what your name is. They're not supposed to tell you what your name is and ask if that's right. So they would never say, are you Linda Napier? They're supposed to say, could you tell me your name? Because there's a lot of people that are feeling very, sick that just agree to what everyone's saying to them. And so they have to ask these questions over and over again to make sure you're the right person. And so there's a reason, but yeah, it gets to be very annoying, which is moving your level of tension. What direction, everybody?
Well,
Upgrade.
but why do they ask questions that are going to make people anxious? And when you're in an emergency situation, she's not feeling like she's with her doctors who know her. She sees the chaos around her.
Yeah.
For God's sake, put a sign on her, around her neck.
Exactly. But the answer, Anja, is because they're more afraid of being sued than they are of irritating you.
Yep.
Well, that's pretty sad.
Isn't it though? It's very, very sad. But nevertheless, you get the idea. Like, I don't know if you guys have ever had a friend or a family member who's in any kind of a nursing facility where they're administering medications. And you got patients wandering all over the facility, but it's medication time. And so they're coming up to you to give you your medications. You can hear why they want to make sure that you are you before they give you the medications that could be somebody else's. And now who knows what kind of hell is going to break loose because of that. And forget the lawsuit thing. They could give you something that would just really...
that explanation doesn't make me any more comfortable.
It doesn't. No, I get that. But this is the whole point of this discussion, that being sick let alone being in emergency room, let alone being admitted to a hospital, is an exercise in tension management. And so I'm trying to manage Linda's level of tension. She kept closing her eyes, and I said, when you close your eyes, you're going to naturally move into your limbic system. So open up your eyes, see what's really going on, and keep reminding yourself of what you know to be true, and that should help keep her in a better place. Because, by the way, again, I'm watching the monitor. When Linda started to move into a limbic place, her pulse rate went up, her blood pressure went up, and her respirations went up. And I'm going like, this is all happening because of thought process. There's nothing physical that is making these changes. So I got to a point where I said, Linda, your respirations are like, 18 per minute, 20 per minute. I said, you have a black belt in Tai Chi. You're an expert at breath control.
That's a good one.
Yeah. And so I said, so do your breathing exercises. She got her respirations down to below 6 per minute, which set off the alarms. So it's like, okay, we don't need to go that low, just to keep it, 6, 8 good breaths per minute. You're good to go.
That's interesting, because one of the major systems in the limbic system is the hippocampus, which is associated with long-term memory. So this is why we can reprise a similar event, or a similar event can reprise the same emotion.
Yep.
Anything can trigger it, a song, or someone can say something, and then we're back in the same thing again. In fact, it's often said that significant emotional events are better remembered than something neutral. So Linda would definitely remember this.
This shall never be forgotten.
Yeah, I sure will.
And I'm going to use that photograph as her next passport photo. I think that's perfect. You can all look forward to a Christmas card from us right there. Anyway,
It looks like she's cruising.
well, she doesn't look like she's cruising, and they, by the way, she just needed to hang around long enough for them to do the CT scan, and then look at it and realize there was nothing going on, and then they called and said you can come pick her up. So she was gone by the end of the day. But
So what the gal said, because everybody was wearing those horrible gowns with the open back, and so she brought me pajamas and a pillow.
Socks, and,
You're the best dressed person in the ER.
Right. And that lowered her level of tension. And
of course, because when you laugh, and that that wonderful nurse that I had that was with me all night, she made me laugh. So that's good. That's attention. That's a downgrid.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Okay. Now, getting into the real lessons for today's call. Again, this is the Oracle of the Self. Imagine for a moment if I hadn't been there with Linda. Linda was just left to her own thoughts and her own devices, which, by the way, describes a great many people. I'm convinced that the person who was in the bay next to Linda was there to basically die. I mean,
yeah, she was.
Monitors were going nuts and everything. And at one point, Linda said, and I had to laugh. I looked at the nurse when Linda said this, and I just gave her a little smile. But Linda said, "Can't you guys turn off these beeps?" It's like they're kind of going like, "No, we need
dying is in my way."
Right. We need to hear these beeps. You don't want us to turn these off."
But it's annoying me.
It is, yeah, exactly. And so, but I brought her earplugs so that she could put in, so it wouldn't eliminate the sound, but it would at least minimize it. I mean, I worked at an ER. I know how these places are. Hospitals are not resorts. They're not quiet. And so, yeah, anywho, so think for a moment now. Oops, sorry, I think I did something and I might have put my screen to sleep. So just a second.
One of your 95,000 emails.
Yeah, really. Yeah. And so I got to say this, in the world of relative stressors, the fact that I've got, a crap load of emails to sort through versus Linda having to go through all what she's gone through, I got nothing to complain about, honestly. We are, by the way, we're also very curious to see what the bill is going to be.
Oh, yeah.
That was another stressor, because the girl came in on Sunday before I left and had me sign a piece of paper that she told me that Medicare A was not, they're not billing Medicare A, which pays for hospital. They're billing Medicare, you know, your B, you know, where you pay for a supplement.
Yeah,
Mm.
because you
Yeah,
were
and
into
I went,
observation.
what?
Yeah.
What?
Okay, and then
Yeah,
she had,
and see, emergency rooms are considered to be signature package, and
Yeah.
so they're almost 10 times more than just going to your normal primary
oh
care.
yeah, and then they put her into the observation area ward instead of a full-blown, you've been admitted to the hospital kind of place. So anyway,
Yeah.
but okay, here goes. We got to get back to the lessons that are involved. Where does someone need to be on the ChangeGrid in order to make the best possible decisions about their health care in that moment? For you to be the best patient for yourself in that moment, where do you need to be on the ChangeGrid? So
In the green circle in power.
Yeah.
in the green circle in power, because if you're up here too far, you know that all that upgrade stuff is happening and it's distorting reality, and it obviously isn't making you feel any better, because again, one of the things that happens up here is that you awfulize, which means you start telling yourself a whole bunch of awful lies that are, that are, because your mind goes wild and you go to places you don't really need to go, worst case scenarios, all that sort of stuff. None of that is really happening. And so you got to be careful about awfulizing when you take something beyond whatever it is that is actually happening. Similarly, if we had moved Linda all the way down to apathy, and morphine will do that to you, how do you think that's going to serve you when it comes to looking out for your own best interests? And
It doesn't.
no,
I fell asleep.
yeah, you fall asleep, you go on autopilot, which by the way makes the medical team very happy. But particularly if they already know there is nothing of an emergent, life-threatening situation going on here. Yes, we have a puzzle we need to solve, but this is not for the ER staff to do about. We need that person to really move to the outgrid area where you are driven to get an answer. You are driven to deal with whatever it is that needs to be done. That's that driver energy coming through and just saying, we got to do this, we got to do this, we got to do this. Now, there's 4 kinds of driver energy if we start looking at the secondary energy. So again, anything in this outgrid quadrant would be the driver energy. The driver energy just wants to make something happen, do it, get it done. Well, how you go about getting it done is what the secondary energy is all about. Now, if you are way out here where you are a driven driver, so you're a driver, you want to get something done, and the way you go about getting it done is just by pushing, pushing, pushing. You're this driven driver, and now you're going to become, if you get in the danger zone, you're going to become highly directive and bossy, and all that sort of stuff may be going on. And so that's not going to serve you well. You don't make enemies inside of the hospital. So that's not going to go well. So let's rule that one out. Now, oftentimes the driven driver, this person who's in the danger zone, tends to be a family member who comes along that's demanding answers immediately and starts to cast judgment about processes and procedures and things like that they simply don't understand. So you got that whole dynamic. I promise you, it is not helping anyone for someone to go into that kind of mode. Might it get you an answer? Yes, but it's not going to serve things well moving forward. So I understand this level of tension. It is not the one, or I understand this energy. It's not the one I would recommend. So that leaves you with an expressive energy. The expressive energy is all about excitement and feeling good things. So there you are. There's Linda, an expressive driver. How soon can we get this done? I've got gardening to do, So the expressive driver just wants to look on the positive side and kind of almost tell yourself that if you keep your mind in the right place, all good things will follow. It's all fine, So this could serve you well, but it could also be a bit of a problem if you are just trying to distort what's really going on as a way for you to escape whatever it is, pretending that it really isn't happening. And again, a lot of you guys are already unmuted. You're welcome to chime in if you understand that or have a question around it. But there's a lot of people who just think that positive energy is going to somehow or another repair your broken bone. So, there's something needs to be done. Now, if we go down grid, this is the analytical driver energy. The analytical driver energy is one that says, I need to understand exactly what's going on. I need the details. I need the facts. I need the figures. I need to see the test results. So the analytical driver is basically saying, I'm glad I recognize I am not in harm's way immediately. I'm not in an emergency situation, but something is not right, and we need to get to doing whatever it happens to be. Now, the amiable driver energy is an energy that basically says, I want to get this all taken care of, but that amiable energy is saying, but I don't want to upset anybody. I don't want to disturb them. I don't want to interrupt the nursing team. I don't want to, call all the attention away from everyone else who needs their care more. Can you hear that if the amiable energy is too strong, you can end up not saying or doing things that you need to say or do because you're concerned about how other people are going to be impacted by the request that you make. You with me on this? Yeah?
Yep.
Yes.
And so what we really need is for someone to simply be an analytical driver. That's where I need the person to be. Now, to your guys' point, how do we get there? The first thing we want to do is move someone straight down grid into this green circle. Now they are detached from what's going on. They can be a bit more objective. They're clear in their understanding of what's going on, and they're also clear that there's still a question that begs for an answer. So how do they go about doing that? Now you start stepping a little bit further outgrid, outgrid, outgrid. You get to the point where you say, I need to have a lot of understanding of what's going on. I want my ability to actually be a 10 when it comes to this. And that should help the challenge feel less, even though the challenge is still there. This is more of a puzzle to be solved than it is anything to really be worried about. So that's where I was trying to move Linda. So we've had this lovely conversation. We're 5 minutes to the end of our call time. But the question is, how do you go about doing that? Well, you end up going about doing that by, first of all, recognizing that over the course of your entire lifetime, you've all become very good at tension management. You just didn't know that's what you were doing. So if I said, you've got a friend, a family member, a colleague, coworker, neighbor who's way up in stress, what kinds of things might you say or do that will calm them down?
Turn the lights down.
Turn the lights down. What else?
Put a blanket over them.
Put a blanket. Oh, by the way, the hospital warms all their blankets. They take all their blankets out of a blanket warmer. We don't own a blanket warmer. Guess what Linda wants from now on?
A blanket warmer.
A blanket
I'll tell
warmer.
you, that is a downgrid maneuver. Wow, it was fabulous.
Isn't it though? And so we're like, okay.
Offer her something to drink.
Yep, something to drink. I was even saying,
turn on some soft music.
There you go. So we all know lots of things that we can do to lower someone's level of tension. They gave her morphine, so they know how to lower tension when it certainly comes to things related to pain. Here, have a little bit more. Have a party. Unfortunately, morphine is very powerful, but that means it has a very high, I was going to say price tag, which may literally be true, but it also has a very high, I don't even know the word, price that you're paying for using it. So, I mean, it is a powerful opioid, and a lot of times that causes stomach problems, stomach distress. Meanwhile, she's there because she has a tummy ache.
Well, and they gave me something in advance.
Oh, yeah. They made you drink that stuff in case they needed to do some imaging of your abdominal tract.
But they also gave me a drug for nausea. And then they waited 10 minutes and gave me.
Oh, right, yeah, because they knew the morphine might trigger it. And they also gave Linda a very specially constructed barf bag.
But T,
Yes.
I beg to differ about the use of, I would not have made it through my kidney stone without Dilaudid.
No, you're absolutely right.
I never felt high. I actually felt, honest to God, I felt like it took my stress away.
And that's the ideal.
Answer more clearly.
Yeah. And that's ideal when they're giving you the right amount of the right medication, because they were able to stop you from having that horrible pain in order for you to be able to, we talk about you need to be able to dissociate a little bit. So detach a little bit so that you could give them some sort of feedback about what you were experiencing then. And
I think the trembling face and body, the sweat pouring off of her face, and
Yep.
her literal gray skin indicate the level of pain.
Yeah, so
Well, the pain, then she was
I'm a
not being
believer.
very well oxygenated. There's all kinds of
Yeah.
things that you were giving. So it's not, I'm not trying to say there's something wrong with medication itself. I'm saying that medication lowers tension. Pain medications lower tension. Now, we don't want to lower you all the way down to power apathy. We certainly don't want to lower you all the way down here. Look where I'm on the change grid, because what do you think happens if I lower your productive tension all the way down to 0?
Well,
Get
I
up
wouldn't
and
have,
leave.
Care.
What's that?
I wouldn't have been
Don't
able to
care.
answer their questions.
Oh,
and
no, it's not even that you don't care anymore.
Get up and leave.
Nope.
I
You fall
wouldn't
asleep.
Nope.
Dead.
Dead. That's what
Ah.
happens when you have, in the absence of tension, there is 0 productivity. There is 0 physical, 0 emotional, 0 intellectual activity. I wanted to bring that up just so as a reminder to everyone, the change grid has a location for absolutely everything that a human being can feel, think, or do. Well, this far down grid, you're dead.
Mm.
So yes, it is possible for us to give you sufficient pain medication that I can lower your respiratory rate down so low that you just stop breathing. And so that'll kill you. I mean, honestly, I'm sure all of us by this age who have pets have had to take a pet to the vet and have them put to sleep. Well, you do understand that's exactly what's happening. They might be using different drugs, but what they're doing is a massive downgrid maneuver so that you can fall asleep, disappear into whatever that oblivion of thought might be, so that you can simply have a quiet, gentle passing. So that's what's happening there. Okay, so we needed to get her to a place of more, I want to say, centered, balanced, or whatever. She hadn't eaten, she hadn't had much to drink or anything like that. We got to do something to kind of move her to the center place, and then we can say there's still work to be done. This is not, because she wanted to go home, and it's kind of like, no, we're not sending you home, because if we send you home, you might be back in a couple of hours. So
Well, on Saturday, when I was in such pain, and they gave me the morphine. I don't know, I think you'd already left, T. Another gal came in, and she was going to release me. And so I must have been in that power position, because I said, no, not until I am not going home until you find out what this is.
right. Well, and that was the whole point.
I'll get back with you.
Yeah, well, because the ER, an ER is a place of repair and release. And so their thought is like, you are not in an emergency situation. There is nothing we can do for you while you are sitting in this spot. And we need this spot for someone who's in an emergency situation. And so I was wondering if she was trying to discharge you altogether or discharge you to the observation level or whatever. But nevertheless, there it is. Linda was able to be in a power place, ask questions, give clear instruction about what she was expecting, thinking, feeling, etc. And obviously they kept her overnight, and they kept her till they could get some of these tests all taken care of. So now we're after our time, but I was going to go over the specific downgrid maneuvers and a little bit of the outgrid maneuvers, so you can see how I can move someone from being way up in stress precisely to being an analytical driver. And so that can be done. Now, again, this is the Oracle of the Self. So it's great that you can kind of see how this applies to other people in other situations. But the whole point of the Oracle of the Self is, how can you recognize when this is happening for yourself? Do you think Linda was able to recognize that she was very much trapped in her limbic system, thought-wise, while she's trapped in her limbic system?
No.
No, this is not something, because again, logic and emotion don't occupy the same space at the same time. They're handled by two different parts of your brain. And so we gotta move things away. But the more aware you become, and so I would say to Linda all the time, I'd be giving her the Buffalo maneuver and just saying, like, Linda, whenever you're feeling whatever you're feeling, you just want to say to yourself, how very interesting. Because the moment you ask that question, what's real, what does this actually mean? You're kind of forcing your brain to go into a more logical, cognitive kind of a place. And that simple statement, how very interesting. I wonder why I'm feeling this way. What's causing these feelings? So ask a logical question about an emotional situation, and you will move yourself out of stress that fast. So go ahead, Tom, Andre, you guys have your hand up. You always feel free to just chime
Do
in.
you mind just telling me again, explaining what expressive is? I
Sure.
wasn't even pronounced
Yeah,
fast.
the expressive energy is all about feeling something, and usually it's going to be positive, excited, exhilarated, enthusiastic. So imagine you're off at a party, at a dance, you're having a really, really good time. That's an expressive kind of thing. And the expressive energy wants to feel something and wants to share with others what they're feeling. So it's more of a social kind of a thing. At the extreme, emotional energy becomes reaches the negative level, where now it's anger, grief, fear, shame, instead of exhilaration and all that. That expression changes to the more dangerous kind of things, and that's what we're talking about right now. You know, Linda could, inside of the expressive driver energy, said, I love learning things, and I love that I'm at this hospital where I can be learning things, and on and on. She could have put that frame around it. I would have thought that she really needed to be examined more thoroughly if that's how she started to express. But nevertheless, there are ways to do that. But the expressive energy is all about feeling and sharing feelings. Those feelings could be physical exhilaration, things like that. A good roller coaster is supposed to put you up grid. If a roller coaster doesn't put you up grid, it is not a good roller coaster. At Halloween, when you go in one of those haunted houses, you are going in there on purpose to be frightened. If you go into a haunted house and you leave not being frightened, you will not feel like you got your money's worth. And so anyone who's a bit of a thrill seeker, anyone who jumps out of a perfectly good airplane, this is what's going on. They're trying to put themselves into a perceived low ability, high challenge state, and then surviving it so they can go like, look at me, I'm a super person or whatever. So that's that's between the green and the red circle. But once you get beyond that red circle, you get up in the danger zone. A different story being told, because now you really are not just frightened, you're terrified, and probably legitimately so. So I just wanted to make sure that Linda was not going to be this far upgrade. Bring her down so that, as uncomfortable as she was, and that she could still tap in to more of the logic that was all around her, if you kind of look at what's going on. Yeah.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. You're welcome. So, yeah. By the way, in between the driver energy and the expressive energy, this right here, this area right here. In fact, those of you who are certified, anyone remember what happens here? What some of the adjectives on the adjective map are for when you're halfway between the expressive energy and the driver energy? Remember what?
Charisma.
This is where charisma comes into play. This is the world of flirting. So this is all charm and all that kind of stuff. So you don't have enough ability to really just go for what you want, but you're still upgraded, still nervous. So this right here on the grid is where people start to become very charming and very engaging and all that sort of stuff. So that whole world of romance and all that sort of play sort of stuff also happens. Upgraded has a very high contribution to the expressive energy. It's got a good dose of driver energy going in there as well. Okay, yeah. So I'm okay with this program being the way that it is, just being organic. Obviously, the audience continues to grow. So I'm okay with us just continuing till we reach our conclusion of this particular series. And then we'll come up with another activity list and do a bit deeper dive with that one. So any comments, feedback? Are you guys getting benefit out of this, or am I?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
Most definitely.
Yes.
Linda, I'm glad you're feeling better.
Thank you.
Oh, yeah, right.
Thank
God.
you.
What a harrowing experience.
Thank you.
Keep smiling,
At
Linda.
least you know what she'll be for Halloween.
T,
Yeah, I was concerned
T,
that she was going to go to Jazzercise this morning.
No way. No
But I was
way.
kind of debating because it's like, you know, I mean, although you haven't eaten all that much and you're probably still dehydrated, you know, you have to know up here in your head. So, right, you got to know right up there is nothing seriously wrong. You know better than any of the rest of us on the call because you just had a full cardiac workup, a full abdominal workup. You just had scans done. And
It's like your physical.
right, exactly. It's like, so you've got all this information now that should help you understand that right now you're doing just fine.
Yeah.
But yeah,
That's a good downgrid maneuver.
that's a good downgrade
so
maneuver.
my doctor's physical with me every year is, so anything changed since last year? Not really. Okay.
Bye.
Yeah, no, well, my doctor is quite the opposite, particularly when he knows that you've got insurance. He's, by the way, he's both very much against a lot of controls and all that sort of stuff, but he really does believe that the whole medical system is so screwed up. But he says right now, if you know that someone is willing to pay for you to have a test, you go right ahead and have it because standing up against it for principle is not going to make any difference because that's not where this game is really being played. This whole problem with the
What do you mean by
world.
that?
What I mean by that is that the real drama about the US medical care system is very much removed from the patient, very much removed from healthcare. It's all about money. So who's
No, when
paying
you
the money?
say
Who's
that
making
you would refuse a test, I don't understand that.
Well, he's basically saying is that if you want to refuse the test on principle, you're
Like what kind of a test would you refuse on principle?
oh, like if Linda said, well, you know, I'm feeling better. We don't need to do a CAT scan. And my doctor's attitude would be if a medical professional is telling you to have a CAT scan, have the CAT scan.
Why would she say no?
Well, because they were
go
saying
home.
we probably aren't going to find anything, but you know,
Yeah,
I
or
thought
feeling
of
like
every time they wanted to take blood work, I thought exactly what T said. Is that really necessary? My last blood work that you did an hour ago came back perfect. I mean, I've got bruises all over my arms.
right,
I would worry that something was wrong. You know, I would worry that they lost the blood or it got got
No,
contaminated
no,
or
they would tell me they came back and they did do the nurses were amazing. They would say your blood work looks great, you know, and one gal said you're a little bit low on salt, but we're not worried about it. I said, oh, good. Can I have some saltine crackers?
she just wanted to eat something and go home, you know. But that's what I'm really saying is that there are a lot of people who are resisting going and having medical care done because they believe that's increasing the profits that the hospital is making.
I see. Okay.
And so they don't want to participate in that. But the truth is that there is no amount of patient complaint that is going to impact the real situation when the real situation is about profitability of insurance, different healthcare and all that. This is really our problem when it comes to medicine in the United States, has far more to do with the business side of things than it has to do with the healthcare side of things.
In fact, 80% of health has nothing to do with the healthcare system. There's what they call social determinants of health. I have issue with the word determinant because it sounds as if you can't make changes. So I call them social drivers of health. So that's when you're talking about lifestyle, environment, nutrition, stress levels at work, all these variables. That's what health really is. But we design a system around the 20%.
Yeah, and I'll give you guys one real example.
Interesting.
If you wanted to dramatically reduce the cost of healthcare in the US, one of the easiest things to do is to say to all insurance companies, you all have to use the same standardized form. Because right now, every insurance company has its own forms that you have to fill out. So you have to have all these billing experts
Yep.
just to fill out the right form in the right way. It's kind of like, come on, we get it. Could you at least standardize the damn forms?
And if you
Right.
don't think that affects your health care, you're
It
wrong.
sure does.
People in the office are not happy about it.
Of course they're not. They don't want to do that. When we left North Carolina, we found out that the Duke Hospital, Duke is a big name in that part of the country. They had 1,200 employees that did nothing but process billings.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
That was
Wow.
more than the number of rooms in the hospital, more than the numbers of doctors and nurses combined. So
Wow.
right there, we have to do something to reduce the administrative side of healthcare. And the thought that everyone can't just agree on a standardized form.
Right. And guess how many hospitals actually own 80% of the system? I just found this out on a call last week. It's 18 healthcare systems that own 80% of the healthcare.
Yep. Look, it's big business.
Wow.
That's my whole point. So we're not going to have any real substantial changes in healthcare until we recognize that that this is really about money, profit, et cetera, more than it is about healthcare.
And Brian, you can probably back me up on some numbers that you know. But if we exaggerate the administrative cost of traditional Medicare, it's somewhere a little over 2, but let's say 3%.
Oh,
in,
yeah.
In insurance, all these big insurance companies, the administrative cost is 20% or higher. And so when you're paying your premiums, 20% of all that cost is administrative. And
Yep.
and if you have a different number.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
the 30% I hear. In fact, that's the biggest waste in healthcare is administrative costs.
Right.
Mhm.
And the biggest problem with the administrative cost side of things is they have to make sure things are coded properly. And depending on who the insurance company is, if you want to be reimbursed, you've got to use codes that they want you to use instead of
Exactly.
codes that are different ones. So we do need to have some standardization on the administrative side, and you would watch prices correct themselves rather dramatically.
Yeah, I'll add one other thing to this is I had a conversation with an ER nurse happened to be this weekend. And she said to me, she was talking about something. She says, well, we have all these frequent flyers. I'm like, huh? What?
Oh,
Frequent flyers? And she says, well, yeah, we have these people that are homeless and have mental issues. They're out on the streets. And it's easier for them to come in and basically have some kind of a complaint or whatever that they trump up instead of being on the street. They get a free meal. They get a warm bed, you know. And she goes, we get that all day long.
Yeah, because the law says that regardless of someone's ability to pay, emergency care must be delivered.
That's right.
Even if you never get a penny of reimbursement for it, you must provide healthcare. I'm not against it. I think that healthcare is really should be right. And I'm not talking about plastic surgery. I'm talking about really medically necessary healthcare. There shouldn't be a real question about that. But good grief, when you start looking at
Should be rules and limitations and stops and ideas to stop abuse.
Yeah, we have
exactly
the same situation with the universities and college. I was listening to a podcast 2 or 3 months ago, and somebody who seemed to know what he was talking about said that the university he attended in the early 1980s has had a 1,400% increase in administrative positions. Not one of those people teaches anything.
Wow.
Or sweeps the floor.
It's crazy, all to keep track of stuff. And weren't we told that automation saves us?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
but yeah. Anyway,
I want my money back.
Yeah, right. Yummy.
So, remember going to the hairstylist and you need to make another appointment and they pull out their book is on the counter, they flip 2 pages, they write your name. Now bring the computer out of hibernation. I got it. Oh no, wait a minute. Okay. Oh, why am I on this year? I need to come back to the okay.
Yeah, there you go. Wow. Wow. Okay, anyway, we've gone quite far over, but no one dropped off, so I'm glad you guys are okay with the
I'm ready to.
By the way, having all this conversation about healthcare, where are you on the change grid? This is, the purpose of this call is to always think about what's going on with my own level of tension when I talk about healthcare in the US. And where should I be, because this is the one thing I've always said, if someone's so up grid that they're, complaining about things, I'd say belly aching, but that's enough of that story for right now. But they're, people have got real issues of what's going on. If you're not going to do anything with all that energy, then that energy is not serving you in any productive way whatsoever. So just, stop it already. On the other hand, if you're upset, and because you're upset, you've decided to, as Brian pointed out, emoto, to be moved into action, great, go do something about it. Join the cause, have an opinion, but don't just have it, do something with it. Otherwise, it's just harming you. Bottom line is it's ultimately taking its toll on you to the benefit of no one. So, okay. So with that, it will end today's call. It's true. So thanks everybody for joining in. We'll talk again very soon. Bye for now.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.